Jeff and Chris, welcome to the Game Informer Show, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's an odd one. We talked to a lot of developers on the show. As far as I can tell, we haven't ever spoken to a publisher, so I'm looking forward to just like squeezing your brains and finding out exactly what life is like for a publisher of your size.
Okay, cool.
Do it.
Okay, perfect. First of all, I feel like there's a lot of confusion with Adult Swim games. There's so many different families and trees. Can you just explain, how would you define Adult Swim games? What is it under? What is it next to? Who are your relatives? What are you guys?
I mean, we're the games division for Adult Swim. So, I mean, anything, whether it's the old Flash games, the mobile games, the PC console games, VR, if it says Adult Swim games in front of it, that's us.
So how does it relate to like William Street then?
So William Street is the building that we're sitting in right now. And that is sort of the production name used for the original content that airs on Adult Swim that's, you know, developed by Adult Swim as opposed to licensed from somewhere else.
Okay, so you guys have offices next to people that just worry about programming for Adult Swim then?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you guys are owned by Cartoon Network?
So we're part of, you know, Adult Swim is the late night part of Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
Cartoon Network is part of Turner. Turner's part of Time Warner.
Okay, but Cartoon Network games, that's something else entirely. They worry about like Flash stuff and maybe more iOS.
Yeah, they've got some Steam stuff, some console stuff coming up, but yeah, they've got their own group across the street that purely focuses on the kid stuff.
Okay, I think we got that cleared up. All right, I'm taking notes. I think I got it, the whole family tree. So what is the history of Adult Swim games? How long have you guys been going? What was the motivating factor to start this whole branch up?
I mean, we've been doing it 10 years. So it really started out of the website group. And so there was, back in 2006, they were looking for ways to bring more visitors to the website. And they got a pool of money. Flash games is something Cartoon Network had been very, very successful with. And so the thought was, hey, Adult Swim should start making some original Flash games as well. And then Mike Lazo, who's longtime head of the network, said, you know, if we're going to do it, let's not make advert games, like make games the way we make shows, meaning, you know, let's find, you know, creators with their own original vision and give them some money and some creative freedom and let them do their thing rather than saying, hey, here's our hit shows, make a sort of advert game based upon that. So that was really the genesis back in 2006. And the first of those was 5 Minutes to Kill Yourself, which I don't know, some people probably remember. And then, you know, a couple years later, we started making mobile games, and that's probably the point at which we became like a true games division, where games wasn't like a means to an end for increasing website traffic. It was, you know, these things were actually being sold on a storefront.
So does that come from Mike and the leaders around Adult Swim just understanding the potential of games then, or why do you think that choice was made to push for original content?
I just think it's more, you know, that is, especially when you're small and don't have a lot of money, that, you know, being unique and standing on your own and being really creator friendly and, you know, and original is the way that you're going to cut through. It's not by trying to do what everyone else does. So that sort of ethic, I think and that spirit worked very well on Adult Swim. So it just felt to everyone like naturally you would apply that same development process to the games business since it's worked so well on television.
And is that kind of your North Star then, Chris, for finding new games with that, or just looking for stuff that has that different vibe?
Yeah, I have been an Adult Swim fan for a long time, ever since the block started, really. I remember tuning in the first night and watching the block. And for me, it's finding games, along with our biz dev guy, Steve G, games that have a humor or a tone or a quirk or some kind of thing to them that would exude Adult Swim. And, Robot Unicorn Attack is one of the first games that really broke out on Flash from us. That's not necessarily like a comedy game, but it has like that certain aesthetic and that certain feel to it that you're like, oh yeah, that's perfect for Adult Swim.
How many how many times a week do you just lie in bed and look at the ceiling and think, what is the Adult Swim vibe? What is the umbrella here outside of weird, colorful, I guess, uncomfortable fun? Like, what is that vibe that you're trying to hone in on?
Everybody asks us that.
I don't, I think you could say the same thing. There's really, not that much similar between Kingsway that we just announced and Rain World and Amateur Surgeon 4. But similarly on the TV side, Mike will talk about, what does Eric Andre have to do with Rick and Morty, have to do with whatever Children's Hospital? I mean, they're very different. I mean, they're all very creator-driven, kind of one-of-a-kind properties. So there isn't like this house style. It's more of an approach to just being very creator-driven and allowing those things to stand out and be whatever they want to be, as opposed to trying to mold them into, hey, these are the boxes that you need to check in order to be an Adult Swim game.
Yeah. Looking at your guys' game lineup, it certainly seems like you're shifting towards some more artistic games. You mentioned Rain World, I think looks fantastic. Even like Death's Gambit, it doesn't really scream Adult Swim when you see a couple screenshots from that game. Do you feel like that market for weird for the sake of weird is kind of tapped out from the goat simulators out there and stuff like that, and you're trying to get a little more serious?
Weird will probably always work, So I don't think the weird market will ever be tapped out. But I think we're trying to, as we bring in more people and as we mature, we're trying to get some games going that have more depth and that are highly replayable and especially when you start charging money for people. When you start charging people money for games, you want to give them something that they can play for scores of hours and it isn't gonna, isn't sort of one note.
Yeah. So Chris, when you're looking for games, how does it work? Do developers come to you? Are you visiting studios? Are you just cruising Twitter? How do you find the next Adult Swim game?
Well, that's Steve G, really, not me, but I certainly help. And he's cruising Twitter. He's playing a lot of stuff. He's sort of keeping his pulse on the game dev community and finding projects that look like they might be a good match for us and then bringing them in. Yeah.
So there's also just a lot of word of mouth, I think, at this point. If you have a good experience with a game developer, Andrew, who's making Kingsway for us, and Landon, who made Duck Game, those guys are longtime friends and collaborators. So, when you have a good experience with one developer, I think we actually worked with Andrew first.
We did.
Yeah, Andrew brought in
Super Puzzle Platformer Deluxe.
Yeah. So you can kind of find these veins of developers who are friends with each other, and then if you have a good experience, just like whatever, you have a good experience with someone painting your house, it's like, oh, you should use my guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kingsway we talked about last week on the podcast, I think. It seems really creative and really fun. That's the Windows operating system RPG. Is that the best way to describe that one?
Yes, okay. That is exactly it.
That old cliche. But I'm curious, from the publisher's standpoint, what do you think? Are there certain beats, bullet points in game design that are especially hot right now? Like when you hear a developer describe their game as this, your ears kind of perk up a little bit?
Well, I don't know about perk up. I think there are trends in games that you hear that buzzword and you're like, well, there are a lot of those out in the market, so maybe we don't want to do that. We want to do something different. I think we're always looking for counter programming to what other people are doing. So we don't really have a checklist we got to find a puzzle platformer or, we have to find a roguelike. We don't really look at it that way. We look at it more as, what have these creators done before? What is their art design? What is their gameplay like? And Kingsway is a perfect example of the gameplay. If you just looked at it in terms of a screenshot, it might not look that fun at all. But you sit down and you play it, and suddenly the hours just melt away. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've been playing this for this long? This is an RPG that looks like a desktop OS. And I would not have thought that it would be as engrossing as it is. So that's more of what we look for.
So what does it take for a game to break out these days? To become a sensation? Is it just having that different take, like a Kingsway?
Yeah, I think it's got to be just super, super fun. I mean, you can, I think we've been doing this long enough now that you can usually tell when something's going to really break out just by the experience that people have around the office playing it. So I remember, before Duck Game launched, I sat probably 60 or 70 feet from where our sort of games playtesting area was. And I could tell you by the sound of the laughter when people were testing Duck Game.
Yeah.
And so when something like that happens, you just know, because people are basically, they're playing the game for the feeling that they get while playing that game. And when people are you hear their excitement and laughter, you're like, oh, this thing is going to definitely work.
Yeah, for sure. So what are the challenges in getting, I don't know, a game like Headland that you guys published recently out there and seen by the people? Like, is quality game, everybody seemed to enjoy it a lot, Double Fine, really recognizable developer. What are the biggest hurdles just in broadcasting that game out to the world?
I think without it was probably timing. It came out during what would turn out to be one of the absolute best months ever for, indie game fans.
Yeah.
Abzu was coming out.
Hyper Light Drifter, Telltale Batman, like there were
No Man's Sky was just around the corner. So, there definitely is, just like, with any entertainment business, if you end up in a really crowded window like we did with Headlander, it's harder to cut through. And that's part of the excitement and the risk of the business of, like, when you greenlight a game, you don't know what's going to be coming out, 2 years from now on the same week that, you're coming out. And so there is an element of what you can control, or what really the game developers, control. And then there's the aspect to it that is, there is an element of chance always, for sure.
Well, when is it just fluctuating constantly, or is there a best time of the year for an indie game or a game of your guys' scale to get a lot of attention?
I don't think there's a best time anymore. Yeah. It's pretty crowded. I mean, just the last 3 months has taught us that, right?
Yeah,
extremely crowded. But a lot of times you look at the schedule and try to time it when you think people are going to be ready for a new game, right? Whether that's in between AAA releases or in between indie releases, you just try to time it that way.
Yeah,
a lot of it is guesswork.
Yeah,
a lot of it's just driven by the production calendars of when the game is ready and how long it takes for that polish phase and that QA and that cert. Like, we're not in a situation where we're going to sit on a game that's complete for 6 months in order to hit some future window. So
Yeah, gotcha. So what's it like working with the big three these days? What sense do you have of what Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo are looking for from games of Adult Swim's scale?
It's great. It's been great working with all three, really. Yeah. They've been very communicative and very supportive of indies and supportive of what we're trying to do here as well. And it's been great working directly with all three.
Do you notice a change from Wii U to Switch with Nintendo's relationship in particular?
I would say yes, but we didn't work with them really during Wii U because as a person who follows a lot of video game news myself, I knew they had something in the works, so we didn't want to start on a Wii U project, get halfway through, and then be like, oh, there's this other thing we should have been looking for. So. They've been very open. They've been great to work with so far. We announced 3 titles on their Nindies stream recently: Toejam and Earl Back in the Groove, Battle Chef Brigade, and Duck Game. So those are coming to Switch, and we're excited about working with Nintendo. This will be for the first time this year.
It's interesting. Yeah, you mentioned not wanting to get stuck with the Wii U and kind of the twilight of the system's age. It seems like so many announcements are coming out now of like, yeah, we're canceling Wii U production or development for the game. Like, I think of like Yooka-Laylee. Yeah, like, hey, we're switching over to Switch. So is it just a weird factor where Nintendo was so cagey about the Switch ahead of time? So there's just automatically going to be a bit of a delay because once they announce it, then all these publishers can rush and talk to them. Yeah. Whereas they didn't have stuff in the works for Wii U necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, I mean, we've been a Nintendo developer for a few years, and we've just waited until the time is right, and we feel like now with the Switch, the time is right.
Yeah, for sure. So, how do you guys feel like the Steam market compares to console market in terms of, games of your scale? Do you feel like just getting the games in front of people's eyeballs is better on Steam or better on consoles in general?
I think Steam is for sure getting more. It's everyone talks about how crowded it's getting, so that's that's nothing new. I think we've dealt with a really crowded market on mobile for a long time, and we've had success still cutting through. I think so a crowded market isn't necessarily bad for us. I think the fact that the mobile market is curated by Apple in particular is what really aids us there. And so, time will tell. I do worry about a really crowded market that doesn't have curation involved, editorially featuring things, because especially when you're asking people for 15 or $20, you need somebody to say, hey, this game is good. And especially games that are smaller games and games that are weird and unique. It takes a bit of a leap of faith for people to say, all right, here's my money, give me Kingsway. And it really, really helps if somebody who's in a position of authority at the platform says, hey, this is really good. Like, you should check this out.
Yeah.
And so that's probably my primary concern going forward on Steam.
Do you feel like user curation just isn't quite there on Steam?
That's been my experience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with, on PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, there's always that chance that you can work your way up to that featured slot and get more of a focus.
Yeah, I think the other stores are, there is more of an editorial team and angle going on, and there's there is some effort to make sure that really good smaller games have a chance. Assuming that you're not trying to go up against a behemoth that happens to be launching the same week. If you can show some flexibility with your calendar, we've had good luck on the other platforms where they say, hey, we think this is a good time for you, and we can give you some good support.
Oh, that's nice. What's your sense of working with Valve? Do they seem receptive to publishers of your scale? Or is it just whatever, floodgates are open? If you're a developer, put it on here. If you're a publisher, it's all the same to us.
I mean, they're very receptive, right? So I'll give them full credit for, like, we sat down with them recently and they asked for our feedback, and we gave them their feedback. So obviously they have had a ton of success, and they're very sort of progressive in the sense of always trying to evolve the platform and test and try new things. And when something works well, or when something doesn't work well, it seems like they react to that and respond to the community. So we're definitely making having good meetings and good discussions with them about all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right on. So there's such a trend of developers, medium-sized developers, publishing their own content. And I'm curious, like, from your guys' perspective, why go with a publisher? What are the downsides of developers publishing their own content?
I think it goes back to how crowded it is on the storefront, right? And if you have a publisher, it can help you cut through a lot of that to be part of a catalog of somebody else's games. You can. There is a bit of a halo effect, I think, on titles. If somebody is interested in Duck Game, maybe they'd be interested in Brain World.
I think too, if you look, a couple other things, events, we had a huge booth at PAX and just thousands and thousands of people through there. And we were able to get lots of press and streamers through, and maybe they were interested just in one game in the catalog, but while we're there, we'll show them, they may just be there to play Rick and Morty VR, but we're going to show them, everything we can. There's also just, quite frankly, the direct investment that we make. So I think a lot of times, a developer who is able to fully fund their project and realize the vision that they set out to create originally, not many of those people can bootstrap a game for 2 or 3 years and just live off savings. So I think a key reason that people will come to any publisher is to help make the game better by allowing them to continue development longer and not simply have to ship a game because they've maxed out their credit cards. So I think there's a place for us to kind of reduce their risk, but then also hopefully elevate the quality. Porting is another huge thing. A lot of people may be able to get the game on PC, but they built it in Game Maker. That's not going to be just you're not going to push a button and get a PS4 version. That's going to be a lot of development work required. QA is a huge burden. You see that, especially on mobile all the time, where people who are independent developers will put a game up and maybe it doesn't get great user reviews because there were quality issues or performance issues. So if you work with, a good publisher, they'll QA your stuff. Just spend hundreds and hundreds of hours QAing across a wide range of devices, so that when you launch, people have a good experience, and you don't waste that opportunity.
Yeah. So
there's a whole host of reasons. Yeah,
I'd imagine. So what's your guys' stance on IP ownership? Do you guys own certain developers' IP? Is that always on the table with every negotiation when developers get into deals with you?
It really is. It completely has to do with who's basically taking the risk on the game. So if you come to us with a game and you've self-funded this thing and it's an awesome looking game, and you just need a little bit of money and some marketing support, we're not going to try and come in and be the heavy and say, hey, we're going to own the IP. But if you come into us with a Word document and you want a whole bunch of money to make this crazy idea that's in your head, then and you want to draw a salary that whole time, then we'll fund that project. But then of course we're taking a much greater risk there, and that's when we generally get IP ownership.
Okay, so it's the full spectrum. It's just a matter of when those scales kind of tip over then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It really is just like risk reward. The more a developer is taking on risk, the more revenue and ownership that they're going to get. I think that's probably true with any publisher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey Chris, here's a dumb question for you. What's your favorite time in the games industry? What was your favorite moment? You've been working in it for so long.
I have been.
Peak geek out moment, maybe.
My geek out moment?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Well, I used to be a news editor at a little magazine called Electronic Gaming Monthly, and I interviewed Shigeru Miyamoto a bunch of times, and that was great.
Yeah. Do you remember what she talked to him about?
I don't even remember. So long ago now.
It's like Mario 64. Oh, late 2000s?
Early 2000s.
Okay. So really looking forward to Super Mario Sunshine.
Yeah, but I think my favorite is GameCube PS2 era and GameCube PS2 Xbox, that tight area where a lot of great games were coming out, and it was really fun to be in the industry. But now is a really fun time to be in the industry too. So I don't think it's necessarily that was the greatest time and today is not good. Today is on that same level.
Yeah. Are you working with any developers now that were making games back in that era that's really exciting to talk about?
Well, I'm working with Greg Johnson on Toejam and Earl Back in the Groove.
Yeah.
Which I'm a huge Toejam and Earl fan. I bumped into him at E3 in 1999 and was like, oh my God, Toejam and Earl, it's one of the greatest games. And now we're helping him bring Toejam and Earl Back in the Groove out on console. And that's just been fantastic to watch.
Does he just have a specific vision of what he wants that to be, or is he looking for feedback from you guys?
He has a specific vision, but I think any creator is always you have to be willing as a creator to take on feedback, right? And since I'm already a fan of what he's been doing, I think, and I also was a video game reviewer for 8 years nonstop. I think I bring a perspective that is useful to him as a developer, or really any of the developers that we work with.
Yeah. So You announced that it's coming out for Switch, and it's coming out for PC as well. Is it coming out for the other consoles?
Oh, we have not announced any others. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect that we would stop there.
Yeah.
Sure. So Jeff, if I have your background right, you slowly got more and more into the games industry, right?
Yeah. So I was working. I started actually in advertising copywriting, and I was working for Old Navy, and I did some animated spots for kids with John Crispaluzzi, who's a creator of Ren and Stimpy. And that led to a call from Cartoon Network saying, and at the time, this is like around 2000, they were just killing it with these amazing promos that their on-air group was doing. I don't know if you were, watching Cartoon Network back in the era, but it was really, really cool stuff. And so I came out to Atlanta to work with them. And then, I've had like 4 or 5 jobs at Turner. But it was when I was starting to work on the website that I became involved with games.
What is your impression of the games industry as you've gotten more and more into it? How does it compare to other industries you've worked in?
I really like it. I really like the people most of all, quite honestly. Like nobody, this is true of animation as well, but like people get into it because they're super passionate about the form. And not necessarily, when you work in entertainment, maybe more on the live action side, it's people's motivations are a little bit less artistic. It's, oftentimes more about money or fame or whatever. But, the people don't get into the games industry, in my experience, to get famous. They get into it because they just love it and they don't mind being behind the scenes. And so, and I think also, games in particular, it attracts a lot of people who are just both artistic, but then also there's kind of this math and engineering side because it's like very much a right brain, left brain challenge as opposed to maybe other media. So it's like I find them to be a lot of just the most interesting people I've ever talked to because they tend to have really diverse sets of interests and skill sets. And I think they're just I don't know, just more likable people than in some other industries.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about developers embracing, more of an artistic edge, and you guys are funding some really bizarre, really creative games. How is that business going overall? Is it working out for you guys? Is business booming?
Yeah, we're still here. We're still growing. Yeah, it's clearly, we're very fortunate. We've got some great IP. We've got things that we develop like Robot Unicorn Attack. There's stuff like Rick and Morty, which we use to make Pog Mortys. And, when we have, or Amateur Surgeon 4, which is now in its 4th edition. So games like that create, an opportunity for us to have kind of a portfolio and say, okay, well, we've got this great game, Pocket Mortys, coming out on mobile. Hey, we can take a chance over here on something that is brand new and very experimental, and it may blow up and be the next Duck game, or it may not. But the kind of having a mixture of things, both new and old, and on different platforms, it helps us kind of balance the risk, and obviously, it's super helpful to be part of Turner and Time Warner, and everybody kind of I think sees the how good the games are and what a good reception they're getting, and it's sort of allowing us to come back and look at bigger opportunities that maybe not even maybe, but if we were completely independent, we just wouldn't be able to afford.
Yeah, so you don't have somebody on a whiteboard every once in a while just explaining that you guys are getting a little too freaky. Like funding Kingsway, what the hell is going on over here?
No. So that's the thing. That's what's great about being part of Adult Swim is they get it. Like Adult Swim has been incredibly successful, making some really highly unusual, highly creative stuff, and so I think we would catch hell if we started going in the opposite direction. If what we started doing felt focus tested or unoriginal, and that we were somehow kind of creating a perception that, hey, the games group doesn't quite get the Adult Swim vibe, that would be where we started getting heat. It's never been in the other direction.
That's interesting. Yeah. So what does the future look like for you guys? Are you working on creating bigger experiences? Are you happy with the scale you guys are at?
Yeah, I think so. We are. Yeah, I think you'll see over the next year, you'll see a bunch of announcements from us that will, we look totally different today than we did 2 or 3 years ago.
True.
And I think 2 or 3 years from now, you'll look at where we were as kind of like a step in the evolution, and that will clearly be doing bigger and more exciting things.
More exciting things? Does that just mean more licensed things, or how would you define exciting?
I just mean we're going to be able to bring things, just bigger, deeper experiences to people. So I think probably a lot of our games, like looking at mobile, we create super cool games that drive, over 100 million installs, 110 million installs at this point. But there isn't like maybe a depth there that allows people to keep playing for a very long period of time. So I think exciting in the standpoint of like that there will be just more depth and complexity so that, when you download or start playing one of these experiences, you can keep playing for a much longer period of time, and that you find that we're providing a lot more support for them than we did. We're not just putting this up on the App Store and walking away from it.
Well, I think also Headlander was sort of the first step in a different direction. I think, when we started putting games on Steam, we brought some of the games that had done well on Flash to Steam, like Westerado and Super House of Dead Ninjas, or House of Dead Ninjas started as a Flash game. And we started growing from there and started doing original games on Steam and PC instead of just bringing the Flash games over. And we do look at Steam and PC and mobile very differently because the audiences for both of those platforms are very different in general. But I think Headlander was the first game that kind of staked a claim in one direction that we're headed towards now.
And I would say too, you look at Rick and Morty VR, which is will be coming out this spring, and that's like I think the most memorable moment I've ever had playing a game is when I first put that headset on and Rick, points a gun at me and it's tracking as I'm moving around, and I'm a big Rick and Morty fan, so like to be in Rick's garage and he's talking to you, it was like kind of the cliched thing in movies where people like get sucked into the TV or whatever. It's like, oh my God, that totally happened. Like I'm in Rick's garage. It was mind blowing to me. So, and that's the kind of thing, there's just 5 or 6 years ago, that's not the kind of production that we would have been able to help, Justin and Dan and Alchemy bring to the market.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So are you guys ever thinking about having more in-house developers in the future?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out, what's the right relationship to have with, obviously by working with external studios, we can work with just the most creative talent all around the world. We're in Atlanta, Georgia, and so building up an in-house studio, I wouldn't say never, but to date, we've really liked the fact that we just get to work with, whether they're in New Zealand or they're in South America or Europe or Asia, like there's no requirement that people come to Atlanta. We're not limited by the talent pool in any specific area.
Yeah, right on. Well, hey, Jeff and Chris, you're a really interesting publisher. I think people should check you guys out more often just to see what the hell you guys are pumping out. Because if you're in the realm of craving bizarre gaming experiences, you guys are a really safe go-to from the publisher perspective.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
So I think that's the pigeonhole we're going for.
All right.
Well done, guys. Cool. Well, thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next Thursday, and we'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this excerpt from the Game Informer Show podcast. You can click right here if you want to subscribe and listen to the audio version of the full show. So every Thursday, be sure to check it out.